So hi everybody, welcome to the Astrology Squad. We're here to give you the astrological inside track on newsmakers, celebrities and historical figures. And by doing so, we hope to teach you about the planets and the zodiac signs so that you can learn more about your own horoscope, as well as what astrology can and cannot offer. My name is Clifford. I'm a full-time astrologer, writer and teacher. I run the London School of Astrology, which offers courses online and in London. And I'm delighted to be here with my co-host, Richard Swatton. Hi, Richard.
Hello there, Frank. Yes, I'm a psychotherapist. I have been professional since 1994. I studied with Liz Green too, previous to that, 85 to 88 in her Center for Psychological Astrology. And I've been studying astrology since 18, and I'm 60 something or another. And I still love it. I am now a tutor at the LSA and been lecturing for a long time and still enjoy the process of getting into a chart and finding some elements of it which bring it to life. So that's me. I was a jazz pianist for a number of years. Okay to earn a living, but not brilliant. And I stopped that in 2002.
Well, astrology certainly, you need to be versatile in that subject too to earn a living. So we have a Taurus man that we're looking at today, and it's the chart of the former footballer and now writer. You could say conspiracy theorist, but certainly somebody that is opening people's minds, a man called David Icke. So delighted to look at his chart. And just to say that online there are a couple of birth times for him. This was a birth time given to him from his mother to him and given to Judy Hall some years ago when she was writing a biography about him called The Astrology of a Prophet. And it seems to fit many things. So this is the one that we're going with. We've got a Sun in Taurus here in the chart. I'll just highlight them here.
Yes.
We have, and that's opposite Mars, which is quite a rare aspect to have those two in opposition. And we have the moon in Cancer, and we have the ascendant towards the end of Libra as well. So anything that you want to start with at all, Richard?
Well, just to say also that Icke was brought up in Leicester in what was condemned eventually as a slum, his parents, working class parents. And I think he always felt in some way a calling. And of course, his earlier years, just to give a bit of biographical information, was that he wasn't very good at school, particularly. You see this Chiron in the third. It's like education was a bit, or he had a feeling that he wanted to withdraw and go and do his own thing. So eventually he became a footballer and a goalie and bits and pieces like that. And he was on his way. And but unfortunately he was struck down by rheumatoid arthritis, which he suffers from today. You can see it in his hands. It affects the whole body, but particularly it started in his knees, you see, and you can see that Capricorn from a medical point of view. There's pains in the knees. I mean, that's an obvious interpretation, but it's not just an interpretation, Frank. It's an actual thing. Saturn rules the knees. There's Chiron, and I think this affected him very badly. It's in a T-cross with Saturn, with Mercury, and with the Moon-Uranus conjunction, which we can talk about later. And it was the search for a cure to these problems that eventually led him to a well-known psychic who I also saw back in the 1980s, so I knew her, called Betty Shine. And from that, it was as if he was in a crisis in around about 1987, 88, 89, as the transit of Pluto was hitting this Mars and the Sun. And then he had a kind of awakening experience to his vocation, to a kind of calling. And I think this temporarily set him off balance, of course. But I think it was real. I think he was guided. I think he is a prophet, even though, and this is the interesting thing psychologically, to be that, you have to run counterculture. This Uranus in the ninth, for example, let me just start there, Uranus moon. There's a deep affinity with these things. He is not only believes them, he feels them. Uranus moon has a kind of electricity running through the emotions. There's a kind of spontaneous production of ideas, that the mind and the feelings open up. This is the Krishnamurti position, who said about religion, a ninth house is the house of religions. He said about religion that it's not necessary to become enlightened. You know, he was offering a radically new view of life and producing it and publishing. Loads of people published work, and he went around the world giving talks. That's all he did. Look at Icke. Look at his publishing material. Look at the radical views that he is saying in order to wake people up. But this is all opposite the Chiron, you see. So his essential wounding has led him on a grand path towards an awakening, or an educational awakening for other people. And he feels it. And it's part, and of course, the square to Mercury and the way he produces, he's rather punchy. You know, that Mercury in Aries can really produce some wounds and cutting in there. And he says things as they are. And this is typically Taurian energy. To know exactly what you're doing. The Taurian, by the way, the essential element of the Taurus is to find something solid in yourself or in life upon which you can depend. Often that's material security. And we come back to this trying to Chiron. Chiron's very important in this chart, that I think his poverty and his feeling that he needed to overcome this was a big compensating factor in his vocation. So he's found something on which to depend, a kind of solid theory. He punches it out there with that Mars in Scorpio, and in a way which is powerful, penetrating. It's made people think, even though the psyche is somewhat compromised, I think, in David Icke, but I think it has to be in prophets. You can't be all right. I mean, the tendency of Taurus is to concretize things in real fact. So when he's talking about reptilians, who knows? I don't know, but I do know there's a reptilian brainstem. And I do know there are some people in the world that have kill or be killed mentalities. And it often comes through companies and businesses. They don't care a fig for their workers. They don't care if it, you know, we all know that. So there's a big theme here about money, about who's in control, about power, yes, and trying to alleviate the suffering, which was his initial vision that Betty Shine gave to him. He said, you're here to heal the earth. And isn't that Capricorn and Chiron? So anyway, there's an introduction. I thought I'd give a bit of biographical background. And like you, I see these energies within what he does as very powerful, and he is living up to his vocation.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. No, that's wonderful. I think you've covered a lot there. I remember being I forget, I must have probably been about 17 when he appeared on the Wogan show, and very calmly tried to explain, and was met, I feel, was met with a lot of ignorance. He was met with laughter. He was met with Wogan, who at his very best was more about his own presentation and his own celebrity rather than his guests. That was my feeling always. And I felt, just having discovered astrology the year before, or a couple of years before, I felt very embarrassed that he would be given such a reception on the BBC at 7 o'clock at night, or whatever time it was, and how it became laughter instead of, I mean, nowadays, I think if somebody came on to talk about climate change, to talk about the changes that he was talking about back then, they'd be listened to, I hope, with greater respect. and it was all turned into the idea that
Yeah, I saw it.
the idea of the Godhead. Do you remember when he's son of the Godhead or
Son of the Godhead, yes.
son of God? And we are all, I think, sons and daughters of the Creator. Obviously,
Well,
all,
exactly. I mean, turn around to a billion Muslims, or turn around to a billion Christians, or turn around to a billion pagans, or whatever religion you like. We're all sons of the Godhead. That's a form of words trying to bring meaning, substantial meaning, to a sense of transpersonal or divinity.
yes,
And all of those words are metaphysical words, but it doesn't mean to say they don't point to a reality. See, he is a son of a Godhead. You and I are son of a Godhead. God can be described in many number of ways. And we're going to do Jordan Peterson another time, and he talks in terms of Godhead as the highest value of all values. Do you see what I mean? That human beings aim towards the highest ideal of all ideals that we could possibly aim for. Yes. So there
maybe,
is some concern here about, R.D. Lang drew parallels here, that when people had mental breakdowns or when there was a crisis, they could do one thing: they could collapse, or they could find out what it is being released in them and turn that into their life substance. And often people who go through breakdowns, and I don't doubt that David Icke did go through a breakdown when he had to give up football, when he didn't know what he was going to do. He went to a political agent and a BBC interviewer, and all of that's here. Publicity, the ninth house to do with broadcasting and all of that business, but it wasn't enough for him. It didn't have enough substance. It was what he called it, peripheral. And I realize we're talking a lot about his life rather than about the astrology, but I think the background's important. He does have some signs of paranoia, but don't we all? Sometimes they really are out to get you. See, and to break through to another level of consciousness, according to all religions and all spiritual practices, you have to move beyond your cultural conditioning. You have to. And look at this Uranus. All of what we're taught, all the comforts of home and country, this moon in Cancer, he says, and it's all to do with education. His entire thing has been to do with education. I read The Biggest Secret. I read The Robot Rebellion. I saw him in Camden. He was quite brilliant, actually, when he first started out on his talks. He was ridiculed on Wogan, classic Capricorn problem. They hate to be ridiculed, taken down from their position of authority and respect. He worked through it, and 2 years later produced some marvelous books, and then had this feeling he didn't care. He didn't care whether he was ridiculed. He had something to say. I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I certainly listen to him and appreciate him. But there are signs, as I say, of paranoia, particularly in what is called reverse inference. In paranoia, you have a story inside you about the way the world is, and everything that you see in it conforms to that story, you see. And I think he has a bit of that. Whenever something happens in the world, it's because it proves his inner theory. That's called reverse inference. In other words, you infer something because you've already know what you're looking for.
yes.
That's anti-scientific, but nevertheless, who's to say it's not true? But I've just wanted to bring in a little bit of psychology there to say, yes, there has been some, let's say, mental rearrangement of his emotions, of his entire life, of his thinking. Look at that Mercury-Uranus square.
Yeah. And he said that after the ridicule of those early 90s period and those years, it extinguished his desire to please or to worry about what other people think. And that is tremendously liberating. And often that's a moon Uranus experience, isn't it? To be so different or to see the world so differently.
Yeah.
But actually being different, or that acceptance of it, gives you the freedom to not worry about the people that are going to be very narrow or
Yes.
incredibly judgmental, or the idea that anybody who's ever said that they are the son of God or the part of the creation then gets ridiculed as somebody overblown or feeling like they've got a God complex. And yes, I think he always said that that got rid of his desire to worry about what other people, or the need that he had,
Yeah.
please, or the worries of
I totally agree with you, and it brings us astrologically down to the problem of having a Libra ascendant,
yeah,
but Venus in Aries opposed it, and also Libra ascendant, which is usually to do with getting on, agreements, graciousness, allowing for another point of view, and the Sun in the seventh, of course, is a person that needs a dialogue, needs an audience. You see, in order to shine himself, he needs an appreciative audience. In the seventh, the public, Jupiter's there. Quite, classic astrology, you're going to be famous in some way. This is the Noel Till position, isn't it? Sun conjunction Jupiter, walked around the world giving lectures and so on. But how do you bring that, the balance between the Libra? And I think, in a sense, he's elevated that Libra. His presentations and self to the world, it's Aryan. He's quite forceful. He's quite dynamic. Yes, he can be quite humorous. He's very popular with his fan base, which goes all over the world, right? But I think that Libra in him is a sense of trying to balance up the ignorance that he sees in the world. He had, and I don't think he is vainglorious, and I don't think he's got delusions of grandeur either. I don't think he's fallen for the God complex. What he's interested in is waking people up through education.
yes.
Now, he may have some weird theories about Saturn and the moons and the empty moon and things, but frankly, I don't. There's something in me which doesn't bother. When a person is inspired to do all this stuff, and he's going to go to the end of his days writing, lecturing, teaching, and trying to wake people up to the fact that they have been influenced or contained within what is called consensus reality. And we're back exactly to that moon Uranus, and I'm very pleased to see it sextile the Sun and sextile to that Mars. So these energies of the T-cross can be eased, if you like, through publication, through his emotional effect on people, all of that stuff.
Yeah. I also think that Mercury it's loaded, isn't it? If we look at the Mercury in Aries, and he's not afraid of an argument. He's not afraid of fighting back. And in that Aries Taurus way, I believe in this, and I will not be budged. I'm not going to just agree with you to make you happy. I think it's got that combination. But the Mercury is opposite Saturn, it's opposite Neptune, and it's square Uranus. So it's very, very powerful. And it's also trine Pluto. So that, and it's quincunx, it does a lot, that Mercury.
Yeah, and of course square to the Chiron, yeah.
Yes. And I think the Mercury Saturn is the school teacher type of mentality, or how
that's a good image.
Who was brought up originally, and the sense that you do as you're told, you pay your taxes, you respect the Queen, all the different things that come with Mercury Saturn. And the opposition, of course, is what other people tell you, but it's also about rejigging that. And I think with the Mercury being so dominant, opposite Neptune as well, and Uranus, he's saying to people, don't believe the official story, or at least question it. Realize that there are subtle shades. You may not agree with all the different possibilities he presents, the different links he's made with his research, but the fact that he's inspiring people to think outside of the box, I think, is perhaps his greatest legacy. You may not, when I remember reading The Biggest Secret when it came out, and that was, I forget what year that was, but it was probably around the millennium, just after Diana had died, and
it was
a lot
about
of it,
2 or 3 years after the Wogan interview.
Ah, okay. Well, I know it was after Diana died, so it was maybe 99, 2000.
99, yeah.
And a lot of it is about the whole Diana conspiracy.
Yes,
And I
yes.
remember thinking, being very convinced at the time with a lot of things that were said in there. And then it comes back to what was the phrase you used about the inference?
A reverse inference,
Reverse inference.
which is concomitant with a kind of a paranoid state.
Right. Well, what interested me about that is that he said, for example, there was a lot of interesting information about Diana's death, how the cameras were switched off at the tunnel,
Yes. Oh,
all
yeah.
sorts of things. But when he said what convinced him most, or was the turning point, was when she hit the 13th pole.
Yes.
And I want to step back because to me, life is full of symbolism.
Yes.
Alma Tunnel, Diana, different things. And there is a part of me that, yes, if you want to kill somebody off, that you may do it with particular symbols, references,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
life is full of connections that we make that appear to be random. We know they're not. And we know that somebody like Diana will be hunted, just like the goddess Diana. We know that Alma, the Alma tunnel, is going to be linked to.
Yes.
And we as astrologers know over and over again how those so-called uh, uh, inconsistent,
References.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, the so-called surprises we get when we make those connections,
Yes.
those consistencies that pop up, etc., synchronicities. We know that they come in everything that we do. The little asteroids that pop up with different names,
Oh,
etc.
yeah. Some of the stuff you've done on that's marvelous.
But
Um,
it doesn't
yeah.
mean that it's not true. It doesn't mean that his conclusion is right or incorrect. But as astrologers, we know that when something major happens, uh, we can see the connections
Yes.
because they're there, not just because
Well,
they've been placed there. Yeah.
at the possible probability of going too deeply into this, um, what happens when the mind collapses, right? Let's say, and I think he's did collapse. I think he had to have a new start, a kind of kickstart. Unfortunately, he went to see a competent psychic in order to do this, because sometimes psychics can be a bit hit and miss. And the problem of literalism, they see a symbol, but they literalize it. You are going to get back with your boyfriend. You are going to do this. You are going to do that. They often psychics or symbolic imagery is seen and then literalized. And this is also the problem with astrology. It's called paleologic, and paleologic uses symbolism. You see, to see things, to see connections, like astrologers do. So in a way, it's pre-rational, but they use the rational part of the mind in order to interpret for possibilities and so on. So when you move around, there's a layer of the mind which is mythic, essentially, and it sees connections. That flew past there, that flew past there, and this and that means this. And some people think that's crazy. We move around in a world of symbols, and you can see that to prove things, a lot of Icke stuff is symbolic connections. The Alma Mater tunnel, the connection with Diana because she's goddess Diana, which is, of course, an attribute of the moon and Cancer, and she was a sun in Cancer. There's a lot of that. But unfortunately, the realm of symbols need to be interpreted in terms of something concrete to real. But a sun in Taurus will automatically concretize whatever they had, whether it's from an inner resources or they will see it in concrete terms. But that's what Ike's predisposed to do. What else is he going to do? He's got Jupiter in Taurus. His visions, his ideas, his expanse, his divinity needs to be concretized in real terms so that then it can be explained and people can talk about it and say, oh, that's not real. But there were archons. You know what I mean? And there are conspiracies, not just theories. And there is a consensus reality, which to a certain extent is conform, is shaped by media presentations. You know, I learned this in the war with the Falklands War. You know what I mean? The number of soldiers that are killed and so on, and they start conforming to, in order to present a certain kind of story. So I don't think Icke is wrong. Yeah, but there are concerns sometimes about how we might prove that. But his books show an enormous amount of research. I mean, Jupiter in Taurus, Uranus and Moon in the ninth. You know, he's used the internet before anybody was using the internet to search and to find out all of these details that he has done. And he just puts the facts out there and then allows you to make up your mind. Yeah. Because in this sense, I don't think he's a proselytizer. I don't think he's going out there as an evangelical person saying you must believe this. He's saying this is the evidence, look at it as I have, and if you come to the same conclusions, then your life will change. See, I don't think he's a prophet in the sense that he's forcing his view like a Billy Graham, let's say, that this is the one and the only. This is my truth. This is what I have seen, and this is the way I'm going to present it. And I don't find any trouble in that at all.
No, I think his desire to wake up, and seen by that pivotal moon Uranus, that need to get people to think outside of the box, to wake up and hopefully come to your own conclusion. But the idea that, in a way, you know, Uranus is about waking up from the dream. It's so you can either sleepwalk through life,
yes,
everything is connected, and in a way that has a feeling of the sheep, doesn't it? And he's got Mercury in Aries, which is the ram, not the sheep. So his Mercury, Saturn, Mercury, Neptune, plus the moon Uranus, it says, whatever you do, look at the world awake. Look at the world, make your own decisions. I think that's what he's saying with the Mercury.
yes.
And don't just sleepwalk through life, question it, look at who's in charge. And of course, I think, as you say, I think that's the key to his work. It's not about selling a religion. It's not about, it's about informing, getting you to maybe blow up your mind, expand your mind, blow up an existing Mercury Saturn structure, as we can see.
Oh, absolutely.
Think differently. And
absolutely.
And anybody that can do that for us is worthwhile. And some of us will take small steps towards that, and it will open up what we need to open up in the immediate vicinity, and others will see that and run with it on a global level, want to do something different with it. But and it's always interesting to see how people react to somebody doing that. The first step was ridicule. Let's laugh him off the planet. Let's laugh him off television.
But that's that. In the end, he had to overcome that humiliation, which of course we're back to Chiron in Capricorn. The worst fears of Capricorn are being humiliated, being disrespected, and having their integrity questioned. Those are the three horrors. And the horoscope indicates that he would have felt that as a massive pain. And yet Chiron links Saturn to Uranus. You see, and I'm going to give some talks next year about that. And you move beyond the ego of Saturn, the known, the structure, the skin, what Dion Fortune, an occultist in the 20th century, called the ring past knot. It's a ring around you that the consciousness cannot move unless it's infused with Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, unless that can come through and you can intuit different realms of reality, different visions. Uranus is vision. Neptune is a kind of mystical fusion with this other reality. And of course, Pluto is a death in this other reality and a rebirth, all of which are shown in this chart. But I wanted to say something about that Chiron briefly before we start to wind up. It's very fascinating that he had all of these breakthroughs, his breakdown and his breakthrough, as the Uranus-Neptune conjunction was right on that Chiron. And in fact, when he went to Peru and had that experience of electricity through his body, which awoke him, which gave him a secondary kind of strength to draw upon, a transpersonal experience by any account. Real, Kundalini, waking, electricity. It's unbelievable, isn't it, that Neptune Chiron was conjunct around about the 13th degree of, see, 11, 10, you know, all around there. So we can see the transits operating to wake up the whole chart, because through Chiron, virtually everything is connected.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for
So
sharing.
that's where we came in. I just wanted to say that it doesn't prove astrology, but as we know, that you follow and engage this rules and regulations of the symbolic system itself, and it reveals itself through dialogue, through discussion, through speculation on a chart, as we've been doing. And to me, it just shows that the chart is alive and living, and that these energies are symbolic patterns which are portrayed in Icke's actual life.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I think that's probably a great place to end it. Thank you very much, Richard. I hope you've enjoyed that. Do look at our other videos on YouTube. We're also on www.astrologysquad.com.
And let me wish David Icke's new book all the best success. I think it's about breaking free. It's not quite breaking free, but looking behind the scenes as usual, delivering his message as usual.
Well,
I think it's called something like The Trap, isn't it? And that's so much Saturn, Uranus. It's like breaking free from the trap, you know. So let me wish him the best success with his new book.
Thank you, Richard. And thanks, everyone. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Okay, bye.